It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, we're talking about benevolent sexism and how it affects men, even if it seemingly does not directly apply to men. This is coming out of the conversations I've had because of the man versus bear or bear versus man or whatever discussions. And as painful and frustrating as that whole thing was, it did bear fruit regarding this stuff. Now, what is benevolent sexism? Benevolent sexism is, in the short term, seemingly positive attitudes, putting women up on pedestals, that they're warm, more moral, more ethical, more refined, more cultured, but also fragile and needing protection from men, in a lot of cases by men. And this type of sexism is seen as good, as socially acceptable, including in many feminist spaces. And this is what separates me from a lot of feminists, including gender critical feminists like J.K. Rowling, that there is this belief that men are just different from women and men are dangerous. And so women need to be protected from men. And that means being protected out of public spaces, including business and civics. Benevolent sexism is a big reason that we don't have gender parity in politics. They've found, studies have shown that benevolent sexism actually boosts male entrepreneurs' chances with startup funding. Really. It doesn't necessarily hurt women, but it does give men an advantage. I don't know what the difference is there. That's just, the data is very clear that there's no detrimental impact on women, but men get a boost. I don't know how comparatively it's any different, but anyway, that's not the point here. We don't need to know that. We just need to know it's not good. Putting women up on pedestals is not good. And whether the language is, women are better than men or men are inferior to women, it ain't good. It is not good for men. It is not good for women. It is not good for anybody because it's sexist. Now, we know that there are predictors for who is more likely to be benevolently sexist. Now, everybody's a little bit benevolently sexist. It has taken me a long time to train this shit out of myself, and I was pretty low in it to begin with. I always show my ambivalent sexism inventory results, and I got like a quarter point on one question in terms of benevolent sexism, and I argue the wording of the question on that one. But we do know that there are precursors, there are risk factors for benevolent sexism. And unlike hostile sexism, which is much more prevalent in men, benevolent sexism, it's women are slightly less likely to hold these views than men, but not by much. And so if you were given the belief by a female caregiver or some woman in your life that men are inferior to women, or women are superior to men somehow, or men are inherently dangerous and women have to be protected from them. See, that statement there, men are inherently dangerous, that is hostile sexism towards men. That is men bad, right? The benevolent sexism is women are delicate little flowers that need to be protected from men. See how it works? And this is why benevolent sexism is a unique phenomenon, because there's nothing in society that says men have to be squirreled away in safe, secondary, private spaces that are single sex for their own protection. And while, yes, that makes the world very scary for a lot of men, it doesn't blow back in ways that are difficult to see in the short term, saying all men are dangerous or all men are potential predators. We see the problem with that. Like, that's obviously a negative statement, you know, whereas women are so moral and gentle, and they need protection from men. That sounds positive, right, J.K. Rowling? Right. Ultimately, it hurts women. And in a lot of different ways. We'll get to some examples in a bit, but I want to go over risk factors. And this is interesting because look at hostile sexism. Real simple. Social dominance orientation, right? Men are dominant. That's that patriarchy crap that we talk about that is less and less relevant. Benevolent sexism, the predictors are number of children in the family, fear of men's hostility, big surprise, right-wing authoritarianism, that's an interesting one, attachment insecurity, fear of disease, fear of crime, race. White women are much more likely to hold benevolently sexist views. I'll have to check that. Stick a pin in that. I'm going to double check that. But age, country of residence, whether you're in a heterosexual relationship, how religious you are, and gender, though I already went through that. Those are both sort of the Venn diagram. And so we see how when we talk about how, you know, intersectionality, term that's been ruined, but it's still useful for things like this. You know, the fact that white women have this expectation of being protected that black women don't. And I honestly think that this is part of the reason that I talked about this with a few people, why I think my attitudes are so different than a lot of people that look like me, is because where I grew up, we recognized we needed to protect black boys from the world. They didn't get a fair shake and we had to protect them. And I forgot to do the help support this channel. So if you like content like this, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Now, I have increasingly been doing work with people who live in Muslim countries or are ex-Muslim, and the benevolent sexism there is so intense that it almost boomerangs around and becomes hostile against men. Again, hostile sexism is the only form of sexism that men experience because there's nothing about protect the men's, right? And where we eventually have to get, and this is where a lot of systems go wrong, is not make it tougher on everyone. That is not what the data shows. The data says we have to be gentler and more compassionate to everyone, because benevolent sexism is not compassion. It's condescension. If you ever get accused of condescension by a woman or mansplaining, and that was not your intent, you've probably been taught some benevolently sexist attitude along the way, or she is responding to some sort of benevolently sexist social trope. That doesn't mean you have sexist intent. That does not mean you hate women. Benevolent sexism, again, is extremely socially acceptable. That's why J.K. Rowling leverages it so much on her attacks against trans people. So much of the anti-trans rhetoric out there believes in the inherent both superiority and danger of men. It is both hostilely sexist in the men are just inherently dangerous thing, and then women needs protection, benevolent sexism. The transgender debate has really made us aware collectively of how pervasive, how rooted sexist attitudes still are in our culture, even though we've dismantled patriarchy. So what are some examples? Harvard Business Review did a very interesting article giving examples of, how someone can mean super well, left-wing men, and still be horrendously sexist. They have seen that a very, very high proportion of men who think they are allies have profoundly benevolently sexist views. Now, the data's not great. It's all over the map. Depending on country, benevolently sexist responses were likely for, and like I said, this is going to be all over the map. When you go, oh, remember, this is country by country. Okay, so this is the absolute best country to the worst country surveyed. And that's important to keep in mind. So in the best country, benevolently sexist responses were likely for 40% of men who are highly committed to combating sexism. In the worst countries, 82% of men who are highly committed to combating sexism held benevolently sexist attitudes. And this is the reason that in places like Sweden, where there's a lot of gender parity in law, we still see, the complementarian view of, well, there are women's professions and men's professions. So even though there's gender equality on paper, people self-select out of certain, gender non-conforming professions, because even in woke countries, 40% of men who are highly committed to combating sexism hold benevolently sexist views. I wish this data surveyed women, because again, women still hold a lot of benevolently sexist attitudes, okay? It's easy to go, oh, I want to be protected. It's really easy to fall back on that and go, my safety is other people's responsibility because men are bigger and stronger. And I guess because I spent my primary school years being beat up by boys much bigger than me, I did not form the opinion that men would protect me, since I was also beaten by male family members, including my father. That being said, because other boys were being picked on by these same bullies, just like me, I realized it's not all men. And then I got into middle school and some of the girls were just as violent. I mean, I went to one of those schools where there was that scrap after school and girls would be pulling each other's weaves out. The nails would go flying. And somebody sent me a video of kangaroos fighting. And it looked like the fights the girls would get into in the 7th or 8th grade, where it was protect the face, but claw, that kind of thing. Yeah, it looked like my middle school experience fighting kangaroos. So who would you rather be stuck in the wilderness at night with, a 7th grade woman or a kangaroo? A 7th grade girl or a kangaroo. There we go. That's the new internet touch point. Moving on. Benevolently sexist responses were likely for between 33 and 82% of men who are highly confident in their ability to combat sexism. Welcome to my career as a games journalist and game dev, encountering Dunning-Kruger on sexism from men. Every DEI gig I have ever done had a male supervisor who, when I gave him my honest view of what was going on with the company and product, I basically got, I'm not racist, you're racist. I'm not sexist, you're sexist. And my black friend says, and well, my wife says, and there's a reactiveness when anybody is highly confident in their ability to do something, they tend to have very, very serious blind spots in this stuff. one of the things they find with effective teams is that the teams that make the best decisions, the actual best decisions, are less confident than teams that less confident in the decision than teams that make less good ones. Fascinating. That also came from the Harvard Business Review. So the final statistic in this article is between 39 and 84% of men who are aware of the personal and societal benefits of combating sexism were likely to show benevolently sexist responses. Everyone's a little bit sexist, right? Like, this is a problem. And for men, there's one more statistic. For men, taking the most direct approach to interrupting, as opposed to indirectly interrupting with sarcasm or humor or staying passive by doing that. So those team bear men I've talked about, I am an ally, right? The ones most likely to grandstand on this shit. Between 37 and 78% of these men are likely to use benevolent sexism in their response. How does this work? Here is an example. It's a hypothetical that the article gives, okay? A network system administrator position is opened up on the IT team, and you're discussing whether to promote Angela, a relatively new team member, into the role. Colin states that he doesn't think she'll be able to garner the respect of the team, which is mostly men, because she is distractingly attractive, so he's reluctant to promote her. In response to this blatantly sexist comment, Jacob says, Colin, you should know better than that to say. Angela's looks have nothing to do with her qualifications for this job. But I agree that the team's atmosphere might be too much for her to take at this point. Jacob's the bigger asshole there. I mean, Colin's just going, yeah, she's too attractive, you know. Whereas Jacob's going, I am shocked by this, you know. But he agrees to deny the promotion because of care and concern for her comfort. It's just too much for her. I have been the Angelina. Oh, they used Angelina, God. I have been the Angelina there in so many circumstances, not because I'm distractingly attractive, because it's like, yeah, she's absolutely qualified, but I think the boys are just too much for her. So then I toughened my approach to show I could take it. And then I was told I was too aggressive. And this is how women can't win in environments that are benevolently sexist. Because if someone's qualified, you have to, and this is true of men and women. You know, I've bumped a few guys up to moderator on the Discord lately. And I've told them, like, look, first of all, I will have your back. Secondly, you know, I don't want you to feel like you have to jump in whole hog, ease in. I have their backs. I am not expecting them to just prove you can do it. No, I already think they can do it. I'm going to maximize their chances for success for everyone. I set the baseline of if it's not okay to do to a woman, it's not okay to do to anybody. Because you can't create an unequal playing field based on perceived toughness. Everyone gets tested at first. Could women, especially like conventionally attractive women, be tested more? It depends on the environment, but usually when anybody gave a shit about how I looked, it was a double-edged sword. But it's still this thing where no matter who you promote, you have to promote based on merit, not based on how much shit they can eat. And then you have to back your people. That's true for men. That's true for women. It should not be sink or swim. So here are some of the things that are embedded in benevolently sexist attitudes. I dropped the term complementarian earlier, and that is at the core of it. It is the false belief that men and women are naturally suited for separate responsibilities and roles in society. You know, women are kind, men are strong. So because women are kind, they're nurturers. They nurture families, they nurture communities, they nurture teams. Whereas men are strong, so they lead families, lead communities, lead teams. You see what I mean? And so the problem is that when a woman is not nurturing, and is strong, you're not seen as strong, you're seen as aggressive. So you're either denied the leadership role because, oh no, she's a nurturer, not a leader. Or when you get into that leadership position, then benevolently sexist attitudes flip in a hostile sexism. And the exact same behavior that is seen as strong in men is seen as too aggressive in women. And it happens all the time. It's the basis for our lingering limitations on women's opportunities outside the home, and pushing them into supporting roles at work. One of the hard-ass rules that I ended up developing when I worked in television is I will not take minutes at a meeting. That is not me being precious. It was because when I did it once, I was expected to do it all the time. Even when somebody had an assistant there, I was usually the only woman in the room because comedy, well, you know, stand-up is still predominantly male. Comedy writing is still predominantly male. It's getting better. But games, tech, I was often the only woman in the room. And the minute you start taking notes, people treat you like a secretary. So I do not take notes. And I wish I didn't have to do that, because there are benefits to being the ones who controls the minutes at a meeting. But the benefits just did not outweigh the costs. And I hate that reality. But it's true. You know, that's why there's so many women in HR. So many women, because it's a nurturing. You're taking care of employees. That's not actually what HR does. But anyway, so that's the complementary that, oh, women are just happier as caregivers. Men are happier as leaders. You know, the idea that caregiving is somehow emasculating for men, or that men babysit and help with the household chores instead of childcare and housework. You're not helping. It's your home too. And this is at the core of these really, really sticky division of labor problems. I mean, the number of jobs I worked early on where it was just expected that I was the one that would take everybody's coffee mug and put it in the dishwasher and run it. It wasn't in my job description, but I did it a couple times to be helpful, and then everyone just assumed I would do it. I didn't get paid extra for that. Nobody got paid extra for that. Those sorts of things, if they're not someone's official duty, if it's not a rotating schedule or something like that, it tends to be women, notably younger women, that end up getting defaulted to that task at an office. And that is extra work. It's gross work because, oh my God, so many coffee cups with this much coffee and that much mold in them. Ew. But it's thankless and it doesn't get anybody any credit. Now, in a well-run workplace, someone would notice the person who's doing all that extra stuff and go, this person does the shit jobs that nobody else wants to do. That person gets extra credit from me. But that requires good management, which is in short supply. So that's the first thing. The second one, which is where we get into with the protect women, single sex spaces, that men are responsible for women. The idea that men should protect and provide for women, and that women need men's protection by men and from men. How do you get protection by the group you need protection from, right? How do you get support from the group you need protection from? You know, the whole opening doors for women. I open doors for everybody. Doesn't matter who. If I see a guy with his hands full, I'll open the door and he'll seem surprised and then be very thankful, right? And that's one of those confusing things for men when women get upset when they did something nice. And this is the unfortunate thing of, we should be doing this for everybody. It's basic human courtesy. But because it's seen as chivalrous, a lot of women think it's condescending, even though that was not the intent. You see how it affects everybody negatively? Yeah. When we start thinking about this stuff as this hurts everybody, it may primarily affect women, but it has negative secondary effects on men. All of a sudden, you get way more adoption of this stuff, right? But a lot of, especially left-wing men, I mean, right-wingers are solidly complementarian. The first point, you're not going to shake them. It's a lost cause. With left-wing men, you've got to get them out of this superhero thing. Here I come to save the day, right? Because that's acting, wow, that's a dated reference now, Mighty Mouse. But when you think you're responsible for protecting the women's, you are condescending. When you want credit for protecting the women's, you are definitely condescending, which is why I trust a guy who doesn't act like an asshole, but is hurt by the man versus bear thing a lot more than the guys who, oh no, I totally understand why women would pick the bear, you know? And that's not slamming every guy who gets it. It's the ones who grandstand. Right? We know that the guys who are very confident that they can call out and stamp out sexism, high likelihood they have benevolently sexist attitudes. In the best case scenarios, 1 in 3 guys like that engages in benevolently sexist attitudes. So the problem with, say, opening a door for a woman in a way you wouldn't for a man, it's paternalistic. It assumes that women are less competent. They can't take care of themselves. They're fragile. And yes, there are a lot of women in feminist spaces going, yes, we can. We need protection. We need men to stand up for us. I mean, how many of J.K. Rowling's male actors, the male actors who played in Harry Potter roles, have spoken up in defense of her, probably because she wanted them to. Way more men than women. I think Helena Bonham Carter is the only one that said, oh, I think everything's so bad, what's happening to her. Helena Bonham Carter has a nasty habit of sleeping with the directors on the films she was an actress in, including a very married Kenneth Branagh. And so she's got some benevolently sexist attitudes there, right? Like the whole, you got to keep your man. No, you stay away from married men. Stay away from married men, even if they tell you the marriage is bad. They break up first, then you can get together. Stay away from taken people. Period. For your own sake, you don't want to get in the middle of that. The third main thing, and this is the opposite of, you know, oh, women are fragile and can't handle the rough and tumble world of corporate, right? The idea that men's personal lives depend on women. And I do think that this is social messaging that comes from a lot of men's mothers, because these women gave up a lot of their aspirations in other fields because they thought that motherhood was supposed to be this infinitely rewarding thing. The idea that a heterosexual man's life is incomplete without a romance with a woman. Now, having a partner is great, you know, but when you think you need a partner, when you feel like your life is incomplete, that it's never going to be good, that you're never going to get your emotional needs filled without a woman in your life, that's dependence, because you need it, right? It not only really breeds some nasty resentment between the sexes that eventually breeds contempt, which is a relationship killer, because there's this expectation that this is supposed to be a role. You know, you're my woman. You're supposed to give me affection and give me intimacy. The minute it becomes a demand, forget it. That is awful for a relationship. Both people in a healthy relationship have to continue to respect the other person's comfort, communicate needs, as well as communicate that, you know, they want to be around the other person. Because if you think you need someone, if that woman is your affection and intimacy generator, you are gonna send messages that is her job and it's expected, and serve me, woman. And it is amazing. Now, women do manipulative things to guys in the same way, because women hold benevolently sexist views as well. A big issue with women in relationships is all these romances create an expectation of mind reading, that you're just supposed to know what to do. You're just supposed to know what makes her happy. You know, all the things where they look at each other and then the next thing you know, they're having this wild missionary sex with no clitoral stimulation and she's having the orgasm of her lifetime. Like, highly unlikely, you know, like just highly, it physically just doesn't work that way. And we send these messages about, you know, the stand by your man, upstanding, like, oh, just infinite patience, right? Whereas in real life, women put up that front and then they go cheat because they're tired of, you know, tap the card, get affection. It just, we have such a messed up societal view of sex. We think intimacy just happens with no risk. If there's no risk, it's not intimate. And we send toxic messages to men and women in very, very different ways. And when a woman expects a man to read her mind, that sets a man up to fail. When a man believes that his female romantic partner is the primary affection and intimacy generator, that reduces a woman to a vending machine for affection. And both are really bad and both are normalized. And I mean, the number of times, it doesn't happen anymore. But when I was young and cute, oh, your husband's a lucky man. And it's like, fuck you. You barely know me. You're just looking at me. And now it's, when the comments stop, it's like, you know what? I'm a better partner overall than I was when I was in my 20s. I got married real young. I made a lot of mistakes. But it's funny that you don't get the, oh, your husband's a lucky man now, even though overall I'm actually a better partner, because it's all about, is she hot? And this is why I push back against the hot thing so much, because it doesn't just demean women. It creates unsatisfying relationship dynamics for men as well. Because that pretty package just doesn't do much after a shockingly small amount of time. If somebody is not present emotionally because they're constantly getting butt lifts and lip fillers and constantly at the gym and starving themselves or taking drugs like Ozempic that affect their emotional regulation. You know what? 15 extra pounds and a few wrinkles is better than that. But we don't prize that in society. We just don't. The same way we don't prize emotionally available men. It's treated as a punchline. Like, as much as I'm probably going to love Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm going to cringe every time Ryan Reynolds does this. I'm going to say something sensitive and vulnerable, but I'm going to do it tongue in cheek because that's what Ryan Reynolds always does. Right? I'm in that fucking cloying Ryan Reynolds voice. And I get it. That's what people want to see. He's making money while he can. But it's just like, can we please have more of the thing that's awesome about Our Flag Means Death is it's a gay pirate romance, but ironically, they play the romance straight. So as much as they make fun of romantic cinematic cliches, the emotional content is real and vulnerable. And that's why a ton of guys love the show. It's really, really good. And it's too bad it was not well marketed and only went a couple of seasons. But these are you're probably saying, well, that's everything. That's everyone. Like, everybody feels called out in this stuff. I mean, I admitted myself that I subscribed to a lot of these things when I was younger because I felt such pressure to be a proper woman, and proper women get a certain attention from men. And there are days, even now, that I struggle feeling like there's something wrong with me, that I don't get that attention from men. And then I have to remind myself, it's like, dumbass, you're not engaging in the benevolently sexist bait. So you're not getting that attention from men because you're not engaging in the sexist rituals that will grant you that attention. You are womaning wrong. But I have a male-dominated community where guys listen to me. Right? So all the guys in my community are not falling all over each other to protect me. Oh my God, I felt so bad 10 years ago when I switched to YouTube from TV. And so many guys, well-meaning male games journalists, hated this about me. Oh, you just felt the rage that they when they tried to jump in and white knight, and I'm like, back off. I will handle this. I can fight my own battles. They hated it. But no, if the PR people, if the devs know that they don't have to listen to me, they only have to listen when some guy intervenes, they're never going to listen to me. So the camera guys I worked with used to laugh when it was female PR people who always, we lost their appointment. EA every year, you know, UB, it wasn't personal. They were just chaos, and there's no check-in desk for Canada. You had to find the roving Canadian PR person. UB's its own thing. But camera guys used to just laugh because after they'd worked with me for a few times, they knew that's their appointment. Okay, well, can you get me in on the neck? And then literal foot in the door, arm in the, like, you had to be aggressive. And I heard people calling me a bitch behind my back, but guys didn't get that treatment from the female PR people. Every female games journalist knows you get a female PR rep, you're gonna have a harder time than one of the guys. Because the guys may treat you paternalistically, but they'll let you in. The female PR reps will get hostile with you and throw their weight around and go, no. You know, it's this woman-on-woman aggression that guys don't see. It's invisible to a lot of guys, and that's why when guys are like, well, women support each other, they talk about their feelings, men don't have that. Every woman in the room groans and rolls their eyes. And I'm not sure what to do about that because I get that men don't read the passive-aggressive subtext, but women don't terribly feel supported by other women as a rule. That's why when you get a ride or die female friend, it is so fucking precious. And this is all, you know, a life cycle of benevolent sexism. And it takes a while to cleanse yourself of these attitudes. So what do? Basic rule of thumb. If it's not okay to do to a woman, it's not okay to do to anyone, period, end of story. No ifs, ands, or buts. If a man is expected to take it, then so is a woman. If you think it's bad when it's done to a woman, then it's bad to do to a man as well. It's that simple. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Cares session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. You are not inferior to women. Everyone's an individual. People are people. No ifs, ands, or buts. Thanks for watching Manly Monday.